All right, guys. Well, here we are. And I actually just did 15 minutes of this video. And it was really depressing. It was like probably one of the worst videos I've ever done. Maybe at some point I'll start uploading videos that I don't complete. Maybe I'll put that on like the upper tiers. But I didn't like it. And furthermore, I did like a 10-minute monologue in the beginning where I went too much into my personal life. And I've been advised by a lot of people not to do that anymore because there's just so many weirdos that are using shit against me right now that I'm like twisting the truth. But point is I feel a lot less depressed. I've had a lot of shit going on last couple months. A lot of bad stuff, some good stuff. You know, we're moving right now, so that's taking up a lot of time. It's taking up a shitload of my time, which is good. It's always good when I'm busy. I seem to be a lot less depressed when my days are structured like that. And as soon as we move into this new place, I plan on starting to go to Sinister's at least like 4 or 5 times a week. We're going to do an art show together, but also I want to really start getting a structured content day. Now, I don't read the comments anymore because my mental health is like too fragile. I haven't even watched the cut for the documentary. We're doing the reshoots next week, or the reenactments next week. And like Jose literally like had to write a list of the shot list because like I'm like not, I don't even have the mental faculty to do shit like that right now. But Todd reads the comments and then he'll relay to me and basically tell me what people are saying. You know, he's like, all right. Probably about 60% of people think you're a bitch. 10% are undecided. 3% think you're a punk. A couple people think you're a punk ass bitch. I was like, who? He's like, I'm not giving specifics, bro. I'm like, all right. But basically what he's relayed to me is the one common complaint is not enough stories and that I haven't finished old storylines. Like I said last night, I did a $20 tier video last night, and what I had said was that I was going to spend the day going through and listening to my old videos, Origins, Henry, Naked Girl, old psychedelic, shit that I'd left unfinished, and make a list and kind of make a game plan moving forward. So between the move, the reenactments, the stuff going on with my mom, focusing on my sobriety, focusing on my relationship, really there has been a positive shift moving forward. But the one area that I'm not happy about and that I need to definitely take more seriously, especially now. Guys, I need support more than ever because I have my second kid, right? Yes, I'm a piece of shit, but my blameless children are not. And it's on me whether how much work I want to put in to fix it and get my content back to a place that's respectable and that I'm happy with and that you're happy with, etc. So Todd had said that people weren't happy that I hadn't finished unresolved storylines or whatever. So I went through today. We met with the lender. We went and looked at other properties today. I mean, it's been like a full-time job just trying to secure a new place for my family. My landlord said that we can stay here 2-3 weeks, month, however long we need until we secure it. So that does take some stress off. You know, it's not like we have to be out August 1st, but I'm trying to get a bigger place just because I know that would really give Karina a lot of peace of mind. And while we were driving around doing our various errands today, I was tired as fuck. I got home at like 10 p.m. I went to sleep. Thank God I woke up like 30-40 minutes ago, because if I had woken up this morning without a story, I know I would have been just as mad at me as you guys would have been. But I listened to a bunch of different stories, you know, from Origins, Henry, the 4th of July, and I actually made a list of things that I need to get done in the next month. You know, start finishing all these different storylines. Really, like, I want it just to be how it used to be, you know, where I'm all fired up, and I think going to Sinister's is going to help. As soon as I get my housing lined up, I plan on going there at least 4 or 5 times a week and really putting in like a solid day of work. That's what I need to do. As a father, it's just my responsibility. It's not a lack of stories. It's not a lack of content. It's just been, I've been really handicapped by drug addiction, which I can honestly say I'm sober now. Mental health shit, which I can honestly say is stabilizing. Sorry, it's hot, so I'm undecided. Someone's like, you have AIDS, you're on meth. Meth makes AIDS worse. I'm like, yeah, I know, I don't feel good. So anyway, you know, I plan on really getting a structured routine in. You know, the doc, we got this last month of August to finish it. Got a couple days of shooting left. You know, I talked to Al Prophet. I'm going to go shoot some of the reenactments. He's got like a studio set with a prison cell. Draven Bennington, Chester's son, is going to play me in my youth. And yeah, it's just going to be a very busy month as far as just trying to get my other projects done. Being a new parent again, having our second kid. Most importantly to you probably, you know, getting my head screwed on straight again and providing the content that we all know that I can. It's just the depression's been really crippling, you know, but whatever, I'm getting out of it. I listened to the last story of the 4th of July and I was actually shocked that I was able to do a video in that depressive state. It wasn't a horrible video, and I'm probably too critical of myself. I think that I don't need to crack jokes every fucking 10 seconds for people to enjoy the stories, especially this story that I'm about to tell. It gets pretty crazy, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't force myself to do it before, because I don't want to fuck it up. So without further ado, so this monologue is shorter than the first one I did. First one I did was pretty long, and it went on, and it was depressing. Let me get right into the story. So this is either the second to last or last video in the 4th of July series. And then we'll go back to Origins. I'll do the second Psychedelics. I'll do Wasting Talent. I'll do a couple more for the $20 tier. And I'll get back into the Origins. Let's try to finish the month as strong as possible. And let's try to make August a really good month. All right. So this story has a bit of a backstory, just so that it makes sense. But I think you'll be happy to hear that it's a return of Poo Poo Daddy. I love you so much, Poo Poo Daddy. I love you too, baby. So, you know, when her and I were together, you know, after I'd stolen the savings bonds, the first 6 months or so, however long it was, when we had gotten the kilo of coke, and we had all that money, we lived in hotels for a while, bought her a little BMW, bought her a nice engagement ring, and we basically did all the blow that I had bought. Because that was my whole plan. I was going to be I was like, yeah, I'll be a drug dealer. I'll buy crocodile-style leather belts. Maybe get a matching wallet or something. She's like, oh my God, Poopy Daddy, you're so stylish. I'm like, yeah, I know. I love being a drug dealer. But the problem was that we did all the coke and that we never ended up selling any of it. Like maybe we sold an 8-ball. There was that one fateful day, I remember it so clearly, when I'd gone to the liquor store, I think to buy cigarettes, and I think that I went to go get cash at the ATM, because by that point we had run out of the kilo, and we were buying coke. May have even been buying heroin, I don't remember. But I went to the ATM, and it said that I had insufficient funds. That's how naive I was. I was 18, and I was just like, oh, this 80,000 will last me forever. It actually goes a lot quicker than you would think when you're buying $9,000 engagement rings and buying kilos for 15 grand and buying cars and whatever. So when we ran out of money that particular time, there was this transitional period where we didn't know what we were going to do. Thankfully, I guess, depending on how you look at it, Kate was eligible for a credit card because creditors looked at her as if she was a student, you know? And back in that time period, 03, 04, they would give they'd give credit cards with like $10,000 credit lines to people that had never had credit lines before. So she, like, right when we ran out of money, I think we pawned some stuff off. I don't really remember how we survived, but however we survived for like, took like maybe a week or two for her to get this credit card. Then all of a sudden she had a credit card with like $10,000 on it, I think. Could be wrong about the amount of money, but that's what I think it was. And Kate had this plan to go visit her family. You know, she missed her family. And I was like, this is after I tried to go kill her dad with a skateboard, and he had broken my nose, and I'd been arrested out there, and I blasted the streets with the little sign that said that he was a child molester. This is after all that. And I'd never understood why she would want to go see her dad after she admitted to me that he molested her. And she's like, well, he's still my daddy, poo-poo daddy. And you only have one dad. I was like, what about me? She's like, okay, two daddies, poo-poo daddy. But he's my daddy too. And I want to see him. Mostly she missed her sister and she missed her mom, right? Her mom was cool. She looked like a lesbian. Actually, her mom was not cool, but she looked like a lesbian. So let's just stay with that description of her. But she was not a cool person. And she definitely enabled her chomo-ass dad to keep abusing her. And I believe her little sister. I don't even know. Her dad had threatened me a number of times. He told me, because he was a defense attorney out in Springfield, Massachusetts, that he was going to have the mafia whack me. And I'd be like, the only thing you're going to have the mafia do is whack me off. Yeah? What do you think about that, Kate's dad? He's like, you will be whacked. And I took it as an idle threat. But then around that time, we were staying with Roland for a little bit. I don't remember if this was before or after. But there was that time that there was just this Danny DeVito looking private eye lurking in Roland's yard. So her dad was actively looking for us, trying to find us. And I'm not sure if the private eye thing had happened before what I'm about to tell you, but right after she got that credit card, one of the first things that she wanted to do was go visit her family. And I think maybe she wanted to go visit them without me, but I was so codependent and so psychotic back then that I would have never allowed that. So I was like, all right, I'm going with you. You know, and if the mafia is trying to whack me, then I guess I'm just going to get whacked. So she ends up getting us plane tickets out there. Now, of course, my relationship with her father was completely fucked, right? He could never see me. So the plan was that she was going to go stay with them, and she was going to sneak me in and out of the house, and I was going to sleep in her car. She had this little Volvo station wagon. And back then, I was 18, and I was down for whatever. You know, I mean, I was like, oh, go sleep in a station wagon while it's freezing outside, and if her dad catches me, I might get murdered or whacked by the mob. So what? Who cares? Sounds like an adventure to me. It's like, that's why I love you so much, Poo-Poo Daddy, because you're always down for adventures. I was like, all right, cool. So we end up flying out there, and she had told her dad that, you know, because she was still in contact with him, even though it had been really awkward. There was this family secret that he had molested her, and it had never really come to light until I was so vocal about it and made such like a public fucking, you know, spectacle out of the whole thing. She still talked to him though, you know, and he still sent her money. She'd like guilt trip him. She'd be like, come on, daddy, you molested me. And he'd send her money. She wouldn't really say stuff like that, and I'm sorry for even joking about that. I actually, truth be told, all jokes aside, the whole situation with her dad molesting her, like, bothered me in a way that, like, the only thing that bothers me more is this dude that raped Karina, you know? When you really love somebody and they've been abused that way, you know, if you truly love somebody, it's beyond empathy, you know? It, like, literally fucking hurt me that someone would do that to her, because I was madly in love with this girl. So anyway, we fly out to Massachusetts, and at that time, I don't think I was strung out on heroin. I'm almost positive that I wasn't. I think we were just doing a lot of coke during this period. I don't quite remember, but I don't remember heroin being part of this story. So we fly out there, and one of her friends picks us up at the airport. So we'd kind of like coordinated this whole thing. And this is all relevant to the 4th of July story. Probably like, what the fuck does this have to do with anything? This does, trust me. So her friend ends up picking us up at the airport. Her friend and most of her friends, like I've always talked about, for some reason, the girls on the East Coast look about 30 years older than they actually are. Like, this girl that picked us up was 18. She looked like a fucking 45-year-old soccer mom. She was like wearing some like hideous flower dress and like a fucking huge visor. I was like, what the fuck? I was like, how old are you? She's like 18 and a half. I'm like, oh, yeah, you look it. You know, her arms were like the size of my junky legs. And she was one of the fakest people I've ever met. What was her name? I think her name was, I don't know, it doesn't matter. It was some old person name. It was like fucking Edith or something. She's like, yeah, I'm Edith. I'm 18 and a half. I was like, hey, Edith. And she acted very disingenuous, very fake, you know? I always remember that. You know, she's like, oh my God, Kate, it's so great to see you. And then Kate would start acting fake back. She's like, oh my God, we've been totally living a healthy lifestyle in California. We've been doing yoga. Like the night before, we were like smoking crack out of a straight shooter, and Kate was licking my ass while we watched lesbian porn. Edith looks at me. I was like, yeah, yoga. Mind, body, spirit, baby. Namaste. And we just have this like completely phony conversation. Now, this girl, I don't know if her name was Edith. I'm just making the name up. It's like Dorothy or some shit. I don't even remember what the name was. But she had no idea that I wasn't allowed at Kate's parents' house. You know? It was like Kate had just told her that, you know, her and her boyfriend were coming out there and needed to get picked up at the airport. Her parents, Kate's parents, knew that she was flying in. They definitely didn't know that I was coming. And while we're in this car, it's like a minivan. I'm in the back seat. They're talking about how Kate is going to be going, like how they're going to be going to Hobart and William Smith, this private liberal arts college in upstate New York, the one that I got arrested at. Edith is like, so Kate, you're going to Hobart, right? Oh my God, there's so many hot guys that play water polo. Sometimes when they take pictures, you can see their ass crack in their Speedo. Kate starts giggling. I'm like making a mental note. I'm like, all right, strangle Kate later because I'm jealous. I put it in a diary and like fold a piece of paper and put it in my back pocket. So she's just, you know, they're talking like what 18-year-old girls would talk about, but kind of like saying unfiltered stuff. ignoring the fact that I'm in the car. But also, you got to remember that I'm not a normal person, right? I'm incredibly jealous, codependent, toxic, all of that stuff. And especially in that relationship. That was my first love, so all of this stuff was amplified. So I'm literally sitting there like clenching my fists in anger because of all the stuff she's saying. Talking about actors. She's like, oh my God, did you see Ashton Kutcher and the butterfly effect? I wonder how big his cock is. I wonder if he has cute little balls that go with his cock. He looks like a guy with cute little button balls. And Kate's like, and I'm just like sitting there, just like nauseated by their conversation. So we end up, we probably landed around like 7 or 8 p.m. at night. Don't remember what our living situation was, but I do remember that we were actually like running really low on money. Even though she had just gotten this credit card, we were like at the end of the cash. So about halfway, so we got picked up in Boston, probably like 40 minutes away is where her parents' house was. And we're like maybe halfway there, maybe been in the car for 30 minutes, and Kate's like, Edith, I have to tell you something. My parents don't like poo-poo daddy. Edith's like, no? She's like, no. Is it because he has tattoo work? She's like, I think so. They're really judgmental. They think that he has AIDS. I mean, I don't know what she was saying, but she was telling her some story about how her parents didn't like me and basically like explaining the situation. Now, this girl, Edith, it's just the name we've given her, had grown up on the same street with Kate, and they'd been like forced best friends since they were kids. It was like a fucking arranged marriage or something. It's really weird. Like, you could tell that this chick was just not Kate's kind of girl, you know? She was just very fake, and she looked like she was 45 fucking years old. And trying to explain to a girl like that why I wasn't allowed in the house. I mean, she didn't go into the fact that I tried to kill her dad, and her dad broke my nose and all the other stuff that had happened. She just basically said that parents didn't like me, and that when we got to the house, it would be cool if she could take me somewhere. Like, you know, go get ice cream, go kill a little bit of time, and she was going to call her, let her know when the coast was clear, and that I was going to sleep in the car. She's like, oh my God, this sounds so fucking naughty. She reminds me of the time that you were tag teamed at that frat party in fucking Connecticut. She actually said that, I'm not joking. That was always like a huge trigger for me. The fact that Kate had been tag teamed when she was like 17 or something by some college guys. You know, back then, stuff like that made me really jealous. Nowadays, I don't give a fuck, you know? Like, if a girl, like, tells me she was gangbanged, I'm like, that's fucking tight. That is fucking tight. Tell me details. Interracial or no? Interracial. That's fucking tight. I just don't care. Probably just because I have no soul anymore and I've become much more of a dirtbag as I've gotten older. But the fact that she was talking about, because remember, there was this time where Kate and I were in bed, and she's like, let's talk about the craziest sexual stuff that you've ever done. I'll go first. I got tag teamed at a frat party in Connecticut when I was 17. It was fucking crazy. These guys nutted on my face in unison, and then they Eiffel Towered each other with high fives. It was so fucking gross, but I really liked it. It felt great. And I was like, get the fuck out of my bed, you stupid whore. She's like, oh my God, I thought you were liberal. I thought you liked Bill Clinton. I thought you voted for Kerry. I was like, shut up, get out of my bed. And it always became this reoccurring thing. I've had that with a lot of girlfriends. I know about their sexual past, and I freak out about it. I'd say Karina is probably the first girl I don't give a fuck. Well, probably my ex-wife too. By that point, like, she was such a hoe that, like, it kind of, like, broke me in where, like, pretty much anything was possible. That's what we're getting into in the $20 tier. The do marriage resex. It's like a do marriage redux, but I go into, like, the weird sexual stuff in my marriage. And there's plenty of weird stuff that she was into. I'm gonna kind of, like, dive into that stuff deep. But this shit just threw me over the edge, right? When she started telling Kate that she had been tag teamed. Or they were talking about it. Talking about it as if they were collecting a Cracker Jacks prize or something. So nonchalant. Like it didn't matter. Like not like two dicks hadn't been in her at the same time. I start freaking out. And she had already said some stuff, you know, about how hot these water polo guys at Hobart William Smith were. And like my anger thermometer was like rising in temperature. When she talked about getting tag team, it just completely threw me over the edge. And I freaked out. And I started with the barrage of emotional abuse. I was like, you fucking stupid cunt. Started saying stuff like that, right? So, this girl, Edith, is like, we're like on a highway. She's like, whoa, what did you just call Katie? I was like, her name is Kate. And she's like, oh my God, you're embarrassing me, poo-poo daddy. And this girl pulls over on the side of the freeway, and I'm kicking like I'm in the back seat. This is a minivan. I'm like kicking the fucking the front seat, and I'm like, you're hurting me right now. I'm crying. I'm in like full blown bitch babble mode. You're hurting me, and I'm like kicking the seat. Edith's like, can you not kick the seat? It's really fucking weird. Now, I want you to apologize to Kate now. I was like, no, fuck you. You look like you're 45. It's your stupid sun visor. It's fucking nighttime, weirdo. And she's like, oh, I see why your parents don't like this guy. And I was like, did she tell you that her dad fucking molested her? She's like, your dad molested you? Was it at a frat party? And like, I don't really remember how the conversation went, but we're sitting on the side of this highway, and I'm just yelling at both of them. I'm like roasting them. I'm like, yeah, your arms look like turkey thighs. And she's like, oh my God. So this girl quickly went from like being all like, you know, happy-go-lucky to like super upset with me. She was like crossing her arms the way that like a 45-year-old woman would do. I was just like, Jesus Christ. So we end up sitting on the side of this highway for like a good 30 minutes probably. Kate's parents are calling her. I hear Kate just being like, yeah, you know, we just got a bite to eat. And her parents are like mad because they were like waiting to have dinner with her. It just becomes this whole thing. Edith is like, I am not driving the van until you apologize to Kate. And I like thought about it. And this happens sometimes. Sometimes I go back to earth. When I used to date Casey, we would get in these crazy fights. We'd both be like spouting out emotional abuse towards each other. And then like when one of us would finish, we'd be like, all right, I'm back. And we were talking about coming back to earth because we'd like de-elevate from this like heightened state of madness or whatever. So finally I come back, and I come back to earth, and I apologize. I'm like, Kate, I'm sorry. I just get really mad when I hear about what a slut you were before we were together. Edith is like, hey, that's not a sincere apology. And she's like, and furthermore, Kate, I don't know if I feel comfortable being alone with this guy. This guy is psychotic. I think he can do better. I bet he doesn't even have cute Ashton Kutcher button balls. And I'm like, ugh, Jesus Christ. Sorry, the reason I'm walking is because it just really helps me with my mental health state right now. I like have to be moving. I feel like pacing. So, somehow I smooth it over, you know. I do have that ability, and I can turn my charm on when I need to. And I kind of realized we were in a stalemate. So we end up getting to Kate's parents' house, and our plan is still the same. She's gonna go get settled in, she's gonna get some blankets, she's gonna get a pillow, she's gonna set me up in the station wagon. Me and this girl are gonna go kill some time. It's like, go get him cigarettes or something, you know, get ice cream, whatever it was. So we drop her off. Now I'm alone with this chick, Edith. Now, right from the get-go, right after she drops me off, she's being super weird, right? And she's just like, she keeps calling her Katie, which is weird because that wasn't her name and nobody called her that. Her real name was Kathleen, and people called her Kate. That was her fucking name. It wasn't Katie. And she's like, you know, I don't really think you know Katie as well as you think you do. Do you know that Katie's bulimic? I was like, obviously, I've been with her like almost a year. She's like, do you know why she's bulimic? I was like, no. She's bulimic because she's such a fucking little hoe. Completely changed. So this girl like completely changes like her whole like way of carrying herself. Like before, she's acting like this like mature soccer mom, and now she's talking more like, I don't know, more rough, unpolished around the edges, and she's talking shit about Kate, which I thought was really weird, right? It was almost as if she saw how much talking about Kate's sexual past bothered me, and she was just like poking at me to see like if I would burst. So we end up driving to some, I don't even know what, like some sort of drive-through, and I went to go get a root beer float with her at a drive-through. I don't know, that's where she took me. And she's like, see, everybody made fun of Katie in high school because she literally fucked everybody. She was known as a swallow queen. I mean, she swallowed everybody's cum. It was totally disgusting. And I'm perplexed by this, right? I'm completely perplexed by this. Like, she had stopped the car for 30 minutes to like lecture me and to try to get me to apologize to Kate. And now she's talking all this shit. Again, in my mind, I'm thinking kind of that she's doing this just to test me, kind of like see how far I would be. How far she could push things until I finally just like go over the edge. That's what I thought, at least. I was 18, I was pretty naive. And so I start getting in like real paranoia mode. And I start thinking, so I was always playing detective with Kate. Always trying to figure out if she was cheating on me, and kind of like figuring out stuff about her past so I could like play detective. It was almost like a game that I played. I was a fucking sicko back then. So I asked her straight up. I'm like, hey, can I ask you something? I'm like, you know, eating my root beer float, drinking it. And she's like, sure. I was like, do you know if Kate's ever cheated on me? And she's like, what if I said that I had some information in that particular arena? Remember, she said arena. And I was like, well, I'd say I'd be very interested. And she's like, well, what would you do for that kind of information? I'm like, what do you mean? I'll pay you. I had no money either. We're like living off Kate's credit card. She's like, no, nothing like that. Would you French kiss me? It's the weirdest shit. Like, this girl was like talking shit about Kate, telling me what a little slut she was in high school. And now we're at a point, like, this girl acted like she did not like me. And now we're at a point where she's telling me that she wants to French kiss me, and if I do, she'll give me information about Kate. Then I started thinking in my mind, I was like, wait a second. Maybe this girl's playing me. Like, maybe she's just seeing if I'll go for the bait. And this chick was gross, too. Like, I was definitely not into her at all. Not attractive. It was the kind of thing where, like, I felt like if I did kiss her, it'd be like kissing a dude. And I was just like, I don't know, kissing dudes was, like, kind of on my, like, do not call list. I thought I considered it. I'm, like, slurping the end of my root beer float. I was like, no, I'm not going to kiss you. I was like, I love Kate. I would never do that to her. She's like, fine. And she's in her seat, and she literally swivels so that her back's to me. And we just sit there in silence for like 10 minutes. I jump out of the minivan, smoke a cigarette, get back in. And she's like, Katie called me, and she said that she's ready for me to drop you back. You made a big mistake by not kissing me. I went and told her nothing. I was like, oh well, take me back. So now in my mind, I'm like thinking that Kate cheated on me and that she knew something. And this shit's just driving me crazy because that's what kind of mind I have. I have this like obsessive loop. We get back to Kate's parents' house. She drops me off without saying anything. And I walk up to the Volvo station wagon, open the door. It's like a comforter, some blankets, a couple pillows. And I just crawl in there, shut the door. I literally watched Edith, or whatever the fuck her name is, drive across the street, park in the driveway, and she just like walks into the house. The whole thing was bizarre. So the next day, I wake up, and this was super sketchy, by the way. Like, I heard her dad like leaving the house, and I kind of like got up a little bit, and I watched him leave, get in his car, drive off. You know, if he had seen me, who knows what would have happened. But then I see her mom get up, leave, and I'm just kind of like peeking my eyes, like, you know, out the back window, whatever. So finally Kate comes out. She's wearing like this extra large t-shirt. You know, it kind of looked like she's wearing a dress or whatever. And she's like, how'd you sleep, poo-poo daddy? And I was like, fine, I missed you though. And she's like, oh my God, I missed you too. Came and started kissing me. And I was thinking that maybe I should tell her about what had happened with her neighbor. You know, that her neighbor like tried to kiss me. Was talking shit about her. Was trying to have me kiss her so that I could get information out of her about Kate. But I didn't want to blow my cover about that either, because in the back of my mind, and all night before that, I had thought about the fact that there was actually information to give me. So that day, I go inside, I shower. I remember, not to get too graphic, but we had anal sex in Kate, like in her parents' bedroom. And then I end up going with her, and she kind of just drives me around her home city, takes me to this little nook. We have sex. It's like some weird like parking lot, like out in the middle of the woods. And that night, we end up going back to her parents' house, and the same thing. I sleep there. So this is the second night that I sleep there. I never bring up the fact of what happened with the neighbor. The next day, I don't remember why, but for some reason we were like either really low on money or out of money or whatever. And I convinced Kate to go inside and steal her parents' checkbook, write a check to ourselves. She took like 3 checks, and each check was for like $500. So we had like 1,500, and she told her parents that we were gonna go to Boston for the weekend, or not me, but that she was gonna go see some friends for a couple days in Boston. Parents didn't realize that she had stolen checks or whatever. We take the checks and we head to Boston. Now, right outside of Boston, there's this little town called Lowell. Coincidentally, my friend Lauren, I don't know if you remember her, she's the one whose dad was deaf. He was like one of the owners of Harley Davidson. And I'd lived with her. She like let Kate and I move in. So when I caught my case, remember we like took mushrooms, the deaf dad being there. She had moved out to Massachusetts just coincidentally, so we had a place to stay. And we go and we hang out with her for a little bit. Now, while we're there, Kate and I get in an argument. I think that I told her about the neighbor, not so much about what had happened, but like more like accusatory, like telling me that the neighbor had said something about her cheating on me. We end up getting in this really bad fight. It's like one of the worst fights we ever got in. And she was scared of me, you know, because of my temper. I was yelling at her. And her and Lauren end up going into Lauren's car. Lauren had like some like old beat up Volvo. Again, another Volvo. I had my skateboard. You know, my skateboard is one of the only things that I brought with me. So they locked themselves in the car, and Kate was crying. There's actually a picture from this day that I've posted on Patreon before, where like I'm wearing like a Pink Floyd hoodie, and I think Kate's wearing, she's like wearing a hoodie and a dress, and Lauren's in the picture with us. That picture was taken this day before we got in the fight. And I keep telling Lauren that she needs to open the door. She's not listening to me. She like will not open the car door. And I get really angry, and I get the skateboard, and I shatter her back window, and like try to crawl in the car. Now, I know it probably sounds like I was like some violent psychopath, and I definitely was a psychopath, but I never put hands on Kate ever. But as soon as I start crawling in, like trying to crawl into this car, Lauren took off. She sped off. Like, well, half of my body was like in the car, and I fall on this gravel driveway, and I got really hurt, twisted my ankle, cut my arm up really bad, and they left. I couldn't get a hold of them. So I was just on this property for like a good 4 or 5 hours. Her grandparents lived there, so she was living with her grandparents, and they were like these like senile old couple. And when they left, I went inside and I told them that I got mugged. I was like, yeah, I got mugged by a black guy. They're like, oh my God, the blacks always do stuff like that to white people. They're like some old racist couple. I don't know why I blamed it on a black guy, but I did. They were like dousing me with hydrogen peroxide, or at least the old lady was. The old guy was just in some like rocking chair, and he had like a hearing aid in. So I ended up staying there all day. Lauren dropped Kate back off, and Kate came and apologized to me, but said that Lauren didn't want to see me anymore and that she had taken off because she was scared of me. So Kate and I ended up leaving. So that was like, we'd like burned our place, and I broke my friend Lauren's window. Lauren and I are like really good friends to this day, and we laugh about this shit, but that really happened. And Kate and I end up going to Boston. Now this is where this part of this story becomes relevant to the 4th of July story. And I know I'm depressed. I'm trying as hard as I can to like stay focused and just tell you the rest of the story. Lauren was like irate that I'd broken her back window, and I like promised to pay her back, you know, and like she wasn't even talking to me. So Kate's the one that's like telling her the stuff on the phone. I just heard Lauren screaming and crying. She's really pissed off. I mean, she's every right to be. That was a psychotic move on my part. We end up going to Boston from Lowell. And remember, Kate had stolen like 3 checks from her parents. I think they reached for $500. It was like $1,500 or something like that. We go to these grocery stores and we're cashing the checks. We like stop by a few different grocery stores. Now that we're in the city of Boston, we end up getting like a really nice hotel, and our next order of business is to get cocaine. So I don't know if I ever told you, but there was this girl named Valerie. Valerie was one of Kate's roommates in Worcester. Valerie, very heavy set girl. She's probably 300 pounds or something, but she was hilarious. I love this chick. It sounds so horrible. Yeah, she was fat, but hey guys, she was funny, so I liked her anyway. She was actually like a really, really cool person. She's one of those people that was overweight and like super self-deprecating about it. It was just funny. It was like one of those girls that was just always made you laugh. Always definitely enhanced our mood. So we had called her because after dynaming, she had ended up moving into the city. And we still had this whole network of people that we knew, including Will, including Eric. But at that point, we didn't see them. I think I'd even called Eric at that point because he used to sell blow when we were at Dynamy. But like somehow we couldn't get a hold of him. Val had a connection to get coke. And so we called her, said we wanted to eat lunch with her, and then we needed coke. We really didn't even want to see her. We were just trying to get high. So we ended up going out for like pizza, and she's like, how much coke do you guys want? We wanted an 8-ball. She said it was going to be $300. I was like, all right. So she calls her connection, and it's like this Puerto Rican dude. I didn't like him from the get-go. You know, he's just like really fast talking. And he's like, what do you mean $300 is a lot for a fucking 8-ball of cocaine? He's like, do you realize where cocaine comes from? It comes from fucking Colombia. He's like, felonies ain't free, my guy. Come on, my guy. You think felonies ain't free? Fuck. Felonies ain't free. Valerie, a felony's free? She's like, no, they're not. So we ended up paying $300. At the time, an 8-ball of cocaine for me in California was like $80, $100, $120 at the most. 80 to 120 is what I paid. So we give this guy $300, thinking he's going to hand over this 8-ball. And he ends up telling us that he has to go pick it up and come back to Val's apartment. At this point, after we had pizza, we go to Val's apartment, give this guy the money. Val's like, yeah, you can trust him. He never comes back. We start getting really mad. Now, although we had gotten like $1,500, I think the hotel that we got was like $300. I mean, our resources were not boundless, right? It's like we had a limited amount of money. So I got really pissed off. And I told Valerie, I was like, well, look, you vouched for this guy. And basically, it's on you. You know, if you don't get us our coke or our $300 back, then you have to give us the $300. Now, she lived in this little shoebox apartment. She didn't have a lot of money, but she's a good person. She definitely was not trying to have us be burned. And she kept calling this guy. It's going straight to voicemail. And she's like, I think he may have gotten busted. We weren't trying to hear that shit. So we were like, well, we're not leaving until we get our $300 or our coke. So she's like, okay, well, I know where this guy lives. You know, why don't we just go show up at his house? Now, it was this big, over 6 feet tall Puerto Rican guy. Definitely buff and big. Probably had cute button balls. And honestly, I don't know. I was always pretty courageous, but something about this guy, like, freaked me out. Where I didn't want to go show up there by myself. And when I was asking Val, I was like, does he have guns? And she's like, oh, he definitely has guns. I was like, well, I don't want to show up there. And she's like, well, I got this other dude, this dude named Tommy. Tommy was like an Italian guy. He was like a Southie. He was like from South Boston. And she's like, I got this guy, Tommy. He's a real bad motherfucker, right? He's got guns. And he'll do it just because he hates this guy. Like, he's been looking for an excuse to kick his ass. You don't need to pay him anything. And I was like, well, no. I'll give him $50. And she's like, okay, let me try to call him. So she calls him. She leaves a message. He doesn't pick up. And she's like, yeah, I don't know. I can't get a hold of him. So we kind of forget about that option for a while. We're just like hanging out at her place. It was good to see Valerie again. And out of nowhere, this dude Tommy ends up showing up. He got the message. She kind of explained it on his answering machine. That's how long ago this was. People still had like old school external answering machines. And he showed up. Now, I like Tommy right from the get-go. Tommy was like a classic Italian guy. Tommy's like, look. He's like, I fucking hate this dude. He's like, I fucking can't stand this fucking sorry excuse for a fucking WAP. WAP means without papers. Used to be a derogatory term for Italians, so it's kind of weird having this Italian dude say that about a Puerto Rican dude. But anyway, he's like, look, I will fucking go there. I will kick his ass. You don't need to give me nothing. Valerie's my homegirl. I'll do it just on the cuff. I was like, cool. You know, I didn't want to go get my hands dirty with this guy. I was like 128 pounds at the time. I was this little scrawny, junky kid. And I hadn't been to prison yet, so, you know, I definitely still had a little bit of fear. And I was scared of this dude. I thought that if I showed up there and demanded my money, he was going to be mad that I showed up at his house, and he was going to end up beating me up. So Tommy leaves, comes back, maybe like a good hour after that, hands us an 8-ball of blow. It doesn't tell us what happened. He just like got it back. And I was like, well, was it easy to get? He's like, of course it wasn't fucking easy. And I was like, well, here's $50. He's like, nah, keep your fucking money. I'm cool. I did this shit just for Valerie, and I hate bullies and I hate thieves. He's like, don't trip. Never knew how he got the coke, right? Like he never explained it. We didn't really care. This coke was awful. It was super stepped on. I remember we hated it. Rest of the trip, you know, we end up binging out on drugs. And however it happened, we end up flying back to California, and that was the end of the trip. You know, more stuff had happened on that trip. Nothing too notable. Her parents found out that she had stolen checks, and they were threatening to call the police. There was some drama with that, but eventually we ended up getting back to California. So that's how I'd met Tommy. Just a real brief interaction. He had done something nice for us. Tried to give him $50, he wouldn't even take it. So now, fast forward about a year and a half later, and I'm in this weird-ass situation with Will and Eric. It's about to be 4th of July, and I'm in Manhattan. 2 nights in a row, I had taken what I think was a barbiturate, kind of blacked out. The first night, I wake up and I have pajamas on that weren't mine, and I see this naked dude that kind of looks like Zach Galifianakis, if that's even how you say his name. Finally, I like broke down and just started begging like a little junkie bitch for them to get me well, and finally Eric starts giving me decent amounts of this China White. Now, the first time that Will had given me a little line, I didn't even feel it. May have been because I'd taken naloxone or buprenorphine or whatever. But the second time, Eric gave me a big line and I felt it. Then I did a barbiturate, Tried to do more dope and I didn't feel it. I wake up in the middle of the night and the naked dude from the day before is standing in my doorframe naked. I'm like groggy and I was like, hey dude, what the fuck? And he just starts howling with laughter and he walks out of the room. Somehow I fall back asleep. I wake up the next day and it's the same goddamn, it's like Groundhog Day. They're eating French toast in the kitchen. There's the naked dude in a robe. So like obviously he kind of lives there. Now these guys had come up with a plan. They were gonna fly me out to California and I was gonna get a piece of heroin for them and they were gonna give me, I think $1,000, I don't know. They gave me some amount of money for just going out and picking up this piece. Will had all the money in the world because he was this trust fund baby. Now, I barely remember what had happened the night before, but I do remember waking up in the middle of the night and this naked dude was in the doorframe. So I asked him about it, right? And just like I'd asked him the first time. And I go, hey, bro, were you naked in my doorframe last night? He's like, why every fucking day at breakfast do you ask me stupid questions you already know the answer to? Huh? Tell me that. Huh? You think you're a hotshot, you little California queer? Keeps eating his breakfast. And I look at Eric, and Eric just kind of shrugs at me. And Will's laughing, like, while he's eating. Now, there's something for sure off in this whole situation. I have no idea what it is. I'm thinking they're flying me to California. I'm going to get my piece. I'm going to come back, start smuggling dope back for them weekly, start making good money, and stay strung out. As a junkie, it seemed like a dream come true. But I couldn't figure out why this guy kept being naked. First night, running from Will's room into Eric's room. The second night, standing in my doorframe and laughing like a straight up weirdo. I was so barbiturated out that I just passed back out. So that day, and like they're being weird when I ask about it. So that day, Will is like, all right, we're going to fly you out here. We're going to fly you out there in about a week. That morning, I asked for, when I had woken up, I'm dope sick again. I asked for more dope. This time I just go directly to Eric. Eric ends up giving me a line. Now, I swear to God, dope doesn't do anything. Like, I did a fucking huge line. I tasted it. It tasted like heroin. Maybe like 3 or 4 minutes after I did the line, I start getting this like weird, like tingling, flushing sensation all over my body. It's a feeling that I'd felt before, but I didn't know what it was, and it wasn't a good feeling. Oh my God. Raccoon. Oh my God, it was fucking scary. Raccoon just like jumped off this wall and like ran past me. Sun's like coming up. God, I'm such a crackhead. My landlord just hears me telling stories about like doing heroin, naked dudes. God, it was scary. Raccoon just like randomly drops out. But anyway, so it was a feeling that I'd had before. I had no idea what it was, but it was like I recognized it as like something that I'd felt before. Now, this whole situation, there was like a weird ass vibe at this place. And they're telling me they'll keep me loaded for a week. But Will's like, yeah, I don't get my allowance for 4 more days. That's when I'll book your ticket. You'll fly out of here on a Monday. 4th of July was coming up the next day. So it's like July 3rd, like 2005 or something. And so I was like, all right, I'll just stay here and they're going to keep giving me dope. But this line that Eric had given me didn't do anything to me. And it gave me this weird tingly sensation. So later that day, I'm dope sick, right? And I asked Eric for another one and he wouldn't give me one. And these guys would all be like smirky. The naked guy was definitely somebody I didn't like. Like he was, just had this really unlikable kind of attitude. He was like really cocky. And I could tell he didn't like me. So I'm like walking around this apartment, dope sick as fuck. begging Eric for more, and he's like, no. He's like, look. He's like, I'll give you a line when you wake up. I'll give you a line before you go to bed. I was like, dude, I didn't even feel the one you gave me this morning. He's like, I don't know what to tell you, man. You got to wait until the end of the night. I was like, all right. So later that day, it's probably like 4 or 5 in the afternoon. Will had left. I don't know where he went, but he comes back. And he's like, his eyes are, he's like, hey, dude, I saw the landlord and he knows that you're here. Now, I had not left this apartment at all, in like 2 days. And he's like, yeah, he's like, he knows that you're staying here. And he's like, we're month to month on the lease. He's like, so I need to add you as one of the people on the lease, or else the landlord says that I'm going to get evicted because we're not allowed to have other people here. I'm sweating profusely, dope sick. After I'd done that line, I got like all these weird tingly feeling all over me, but I couldn't put my finger on like why I felt that way, but again, it was like a feeling that I'd recognized. So whatever he was telling me, because I was like in some sort of like dope, sick psychosis, like delirium, like not really thinking. So I can't sit still. Much easier for me to tell stories when I'm walking around. I feel bad though, my landlord probably can hear me, but whatever. So I just signed this piece of paper. Like, it seemed to make sense. I mean, the story seemed to add up to some degree. So I signed the piece of paper. And that's that. Will's like, thanks, man. I'm adding you to the lease. He's like, oh, he had me print my name, put my date of birth, and sign. I didn't even read what I was signing. I just signed some piece of paper. Again, I was like 19 and I was really naive at the time. I didn't even know what I was doing. So later that day, they order a pizza. They were like asking me what I want. And they're telling me that they're going to get one with anchovies on it. Now, anchovies is probably like the one topping I can't do. It's fucking disgusting. I'd rather get butt fucked till I barf. It's probably the same equivalent. So I was like, just get me, like, can you do half of it? Just pepperoni and sausage? They're like, yeah, sure, man. Now they're being, like, it's almost like after I signed that piece of paper, they had gotten weird with me. I don't know. It's like, it seemed like the atmosphere there changed right after that. And they were all like, kind of smirking a lot. Almost felt like I was the butt end of a joke or something. Like an hour after the pizza's ordered, there's a knock on the door. And Will's like, hey, can you go get the pizza? And he hands me like $40 or whatever to pay for it. So I go to the front door. I open it, and there's this, like, I don't know, kind of chubby white dude. And he's, like, you know, in some, like, white t-shirt with a pizza emblem on it. And he's covered in blood. Like, his t-shirt is, like, soaked in blood. And he tells me the total or whatever, and I hand him the money. It was like $32, and Will had told me to tip him everything. And I'm sitting there, I'm looking at him. This dude is covered in blood. Like, it was the kind of thing where, like, I don't know. It could be nothing else. Like, it couldn't have been paint. It was like the perfect consistency for blood. And he's just like kind of like looking at me. He has this really weird look on his face. Like, he almost looks embarrassed that he's delivering this pizza covered in blood or whatever. I'm tripping out. I'm like, give him the money and take the pizza, walk back into the kitchen, put it on the counter, and they like get these paper plates and we start eating. Right? I take my little half, take a couple slices. They're eating, and like, I'm like, hey, guys. They all are like, yes. I'm like, hey, when I got the pizza, the guy had blood all over his shirt. And they're all smiling. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, the guy that delivered the pizza was covered in blood. Like, his t-shirt was covered in blood. And they're like, huh. That's really weird, isn't it, Eric? Eric's like, that's weird. The big guy, the naked guy, is now, like, in clothes. Not wearing a bathrobe anymore. He's like, got like sweatpants on and a t-shirt. He's like, that is weird. And he just keeps stuffing his face with these disgusting anchovy pizza. So by this point, I'm like beyond dope sick, right? Like, I'm sweating. I'm confused. I don't know why this dude was naked in the fucking door frame. I don't even know who this guy is or why he's still here. And then when I went to get pizza, the dude had a t-shirt that was covered in blood. Fucking tripping me out, right? I had no idea what was going on. And I signed some lease. It was just a weird situation. So, Eric, after we get finished with the pizza, they're watching something on TV. I don't even know what it was. Watching some TV show. Might have been Dexter or something. I don't remember. But they're all watching something. And Eric, like, pauses the TV. It was like DVR or whatever. And he's like, hey, you guys want to get some blow? And I was like, yeah, of course. It's like I couldn't feel the fucking heroin. So I was hoping that maybe I'd feel the coke. Eric's like, cool. Yeah, I'm going to get some. I don't know. I was just seeing if you want to do some with it. It's free, of course. Right, this whole attitude changed. When they first took out the 7 grams, before we'd come up with this plan for me to start flying out and bringing ounces of tar out, he wanted to charge me all this money. Now everything's free. They're getting me pizza, even though the pizza guy's covered in blood. Now he's offering to give me some coke. So later, I never see anybody come to the house either, which was fucking odd. We're like sitting there watching TV. And at one point, Eric goes upstairs and comes back down. And he's got like a couple grams of coke in a bag. And he's like, yo, you still want to do some blow? I was like, yeah. So he like gets a CD case and he puts it on the coffee table. He pours out some of this bag. Takes out a credit card and just hands it to me. It gives me like a $20 bill to snort it with. So I'm like greedily making myself lines. I make myself a fat one. Do it, and this coke it like makes me grimace. Like, it makes me wince. The shit is so cut. It's just disgusting coke. And I was like, it like made me nauseous. So I like did the line, and I went upstairs to the bathroom, because the bathroom was located upstairs. I go in the bathroom, and I'm like I literally feel like I'm gonna puke. That's how disgusting the drip is. It's like, didn't even taste like coke. Kind of tasted like coke, but you could definitely tell there was something else in it. And I'm like hung over the toilet, like trying to like stick my finger down my throat to make myself puke, because it made me feel sick instantly. And then all of a sudden my stomach starts bubbling a little bit. I have like bubble gut or whatever. So I sit on the toilet and I just have the most explosive diarrhea, which isn't abnormal because I'm dope sick, but it was just the violence of it. Felt like Australian thunder was blowing out of my butthole. Felt like somebody was blowing suds out of a snorkel or something. It was crazy. I'm sitting there like literally like holding on to the seat because it's like so intense. It's like volcanic shit. And I'm just I'm shitting so hard that I'm sweating. And I'm sitting there, and there's this like digital alarm clock, like a black black face with like red letters or whatever. I'm like sitting there shitting, and I'm looking, and it's just doesn't have the right time. It's just flashing midnight, right? How like a alarm clock would be if it wasn't programmed. I'm sitting there shitting, and I think I'm just trying to like concentrate on something besides the fact that there's like volcanic lava spewing out of my butthole. I'm looking at this digital clock, and there's this like red light kind of coming out of this eye of it, like above it. It was like a square digital clock, but there was like this weird, like, I don't know, it looked like a camera. And I can't stop shitting, but I'm looking at it. I wouldn't have even noticed it if I wasn't staring at it, like trying not to think about anything but shitting. And so finally I finished. I'm probably on the toilet for 30 minutes. Never ended up puking. And I go and I look at this digital clock, and I don't know if I was paranoid, but to me, it looked like it was some sort of camera. It was plugged in. It was really heavy. Back in like 2004, 2005, so like technology wasn't what it is now. Like back then, to have a hidden camera, and then it was like a big, bulky device. And I was almost positive that there was a camera inside of there, pointed right at me. All of these things start adding up in my mind, right? Like thinking about the pizza thing, thinking about the naked dude, thinking about how weird these guys are acting, thinking about the drugs that aren't doing anything, that are bunk. And I think about the feeling that I got when I did that heroin, and I got that weird tingly feeling all over me. It felt just like niacin, which is like a kind of like a flushing agent that I used to take when I tried to beat drug test. And if you've ever done niacin, you know that flush. There's nothing else that feels like it. All of these things I'm like thinking about. Plus I'm dope sick, so my mind is a little cloudy. And I'm kind of like trying to think about what all this means. And somehow I think of Valerie, and I think of Tommy, the guy that helped me get that coke back when that Puerto Rican dude in Boston had burned me. And I just started thinking that I was probably in a bad situation here. Maybe I could reach out to Valerie. Maybe that guy could like help me, because I definitely had the sense that there was something wrong at this place. And I definitely was right. And now that you know the backstory with Tommy, we're gonna have one more video where we conclude this. It's a fucking really weird conclusion to this little mini-series. But anyway, sun's coming up. Gotta get some sleep. I will conclude this video today, and I'll try to get an Origins video in too. Appreciate you guys. Palabra.